This program is proudly brought to you by Intuit, powering prosperity around the world. In 2017, Canada became the first country to create a national artificial intelligence strategy, injecting $125 million into the nation's top AI minds and institutions. The move has helped to solidify Canada's spot as a global AI hub and came after years of innovation from machine learning pioneers like Geoffrey Hinton, Yoshua Bengio, and Yan LeCun. In fact, according to the latest research from the University of Toronto, over the past 10 years, Canada's private AI sector brought in over $3 billion in investment and created more than 50,000 jobs. The country counts over 660 AI companies, with Toronto and Montreal leading the charge. But despite all of the hype, companies face challenges growing into global players. Although funding is readily available for startups, AI firms often run into trouble getting the cash to scale. On this episode, we'll discuss why it's difficult for Canadian AI startups to grow past mid-tier status and what can be done to solve the problem. To kick things off, I'm joined by Sonia Senek, Executive Director at the Creative Destruction Lab, Sean Chance, Partner at OMERS Ventures, and Todd Simpson, Partner at Inovia Capital. Todd, let's start with you. Do funding challenges exist for Canadian startups?
Well, I certainly hope so. I think funding challenges should be there for any startup. It's a good, healthy, competitive environment. Maybe the question is, are there more funding challenges for Canadian startups than others? I think COVID has also leveled the playing field. You can now raise money remotely without ever meeting the VC that you're raising money from. The barriers and the boundaries between geographies are sort of breaking down even more than they were pre-COVID. So if Canadian companies are having more challenges than companies in the States, I think that's a different issue. I think great companies can now raise regardless of where they are in the world.
Sean, why is it particularly difficult once startups reach mid-tier status?
Historically, there's probably been a little bit more of a gap there in the investor environment in Canada. I think as Todd just mentioned, some of that is changing. On OMERS' side, we actually opened a growth equity division, which is addressing that specific part of the market. And I think some other folks here around the table are also doing some similar things. So I think that may have been something in the past. I'm feeling much more optimistic about it now.
Sonia, is the level of AI talent Canada produces in line with the number of successful AI companies you would expect to see as a result?
We have a fantastic research and development in AI in Canada. What I think is a challenge for the mid-tier status and the growth is actually a very thin labor market for people who have experience scaling. And when you have a company that you're scaling in the Bay, you have a pool of people to pull from that have scaled from 50 to 100 to 1,000 employees, whether in engineering or product or HR. That is a gap right now, I'd say, in Canada.
Todd, the VC industry has warned of a severely weakened innovation sector if the Canadian government doesn't address funding challenges. Do you agree?
Government can always do better, but I think in Canada we actually have a pretty amazing system and some really good support structures, from the early research support and Amy and Mila and Vector to what BDC is doing to the shreds to everything else. And so I think we can always complain about how things could be better, and obviously they can be. But I think entrepreneurs, by their very nature, should succeed regardless of challenges like that. And actually blaming success or failure on other people is not making for a great entrepreneur. So I think, we have as good an ecosystem and as good a structure as basically anywhere in the world. And I think our entrepreneurs are thriving and growing in this environment.
So, Sonia, what does government need to do exactly to help further the ecosystem?
Support science. I'd say, when we have science and we can support them in commercializing, that's where the market takes over. That is where the government can sort of generate the most lift for Canadian researchers.
Sean, generally, where is funding coming from? Venture capital, angel investors, institutional investors? Is it within Canada or overseas?
One of the more interesting trends after the successes of last year and the number of exits is actually the angel ecosystem, which is starting to become a lot more vibrant and is a really important part of Canada's tech ecosystem. Obviously, venture is playing a really key role after that throughout the various stages.
Todd, how has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted funding?
Obviously, interest rates have been held very low by governments around the world, meaning that there's a lot of money, right? Sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, plus the money that's being printed by governments finding its way through the ecosystem. And that's trillions of dollars. So even a small amount of that coming into venture capital has had a big impact. So funds are larger, funds are doing more deals, there's more opportunity, there's more cash in the system. And likewise, obviously, software overall has accelerated growth during the pandemic.
Sonia, startups with minorities at the helm face even more challenges. So how should this issue be addressed?
So there's a lot of great initiatives right now in Canada. There's the 51, for example, focusing on women-led ventures. We see a number of them in our mentor community at CDL. I think it's recognizing the potential in a founder in a holistic sense. Everything from their background in education, their experience in life, what they bring to the table with regards to resilience and their ability to sort of work within the constraints they've had. I mean, I think that that's an evolving space. People are learning how to recognize those as exceptional abilities and having new and different conversations. I think just a continued openness and curiosity to learn and explore and quite frankly, tap into amazing pools of talent.
And Todd, why is it so difficult for companies to commercialize AI solutions?
A lot of companies are commercializing AI. In fact, it's fairly mature now in products sort of across the board, sort of the existing AI algorithms. I think we do face as an industry the ongoing challenges of ensuring that bias doesn't get into these systems, that data is treated appropriately across the ecosystems, that we don't continue to build these filter bubbles that reinforce people and put them into their existing boxes. So I think it's more the large implications of AI-driven systems that we're still struggling with as an industry and where there's lots of room for improvement.
Well, it sounds like accurate, unbiased data is the key for companies to be successful in the future with artificial intelligence. Sonia, Todd, Sean, thank you very much for your time. 2020 marked the second highest year on record for venture capital investments in Canada, according to the Canadian Venture Capital Private Equity Association. With $4.4 billion across 509 deals, it came in second only to 2019. Artificial intelligence companies have been a clear winner, with research from Radical Ventures showing that Canadian AI startups raised nearly $4 billion between 2015 and 2020, and that AI funding in the first 3 quarters of 2020 accounted for more than 23% of all VC investment in the country. But data from the CVCA shows that despite a boon for seed stage funding, investments in stage A and B, or early stage startups, dropped significantly from 2019 and even below 2017 levels. For more on the funding challenges facing Canadian AI startups, I'm joined by Audrey Ancian, AI Institute Canada leader at Deloitte Canada's Artificial Intelligence practice. Audrey, how are you helping companies adopt and scale artificial intelligence applications?
The AI Institute is helping Canadian organizations demystify what AI is and how applied AI can really help drive business outcomes.
Are companies hesitant to invest in AI no matter the stage they are at?
The hesitations are big, and that's why we've set up the Institute, is to demonstrate, yes, that there are risks, but those can be quantified and mitigated. And also we should be talking about the opportunities, the business case for launching AI. So that's why we're here to show concrete examples of applied AI.
What are some of the risks?
Most of the risks we hear about are around biases in the data. the machines learn on the data that we feed them. And so based on the data we feed, there might be inherent biases or biases that we hadn't intended. One of the things we want to make sure we do is to build diverse teams, teams that are representative of the population that will be consuming those AI solutions.
What kinds of companies are you working with and how are they using AI?
We are working with large, medium companies, but also the public sector, which is really inspiring. For example, at the moment, we're helping the government of Alberta with formulating their AI strategy and driving AI pilots. So it is truly inspiring to see our government also become a client of AI.
What funding challenges exist for companies when it comes to the innovation sector in Canada?
So I know we talk a lot about funding challenges, and there are some, Michael, but I think we should also talk about the funding opportunities. When you look at the past 5 years, the number of active AI firms has doubled in the last 5 years to over 660 active AI firms. They have raised over $3 billion. This is quite significant. And so what I think we need to do as Canadians is be very proud of that economic sector that we've built, and be mindful that we are ranked according to the Global AI Index as fourth or fifth in the world, depending on the variable you look at. And actually, for commercialization, we are ranked fifth in the world. So while funding challenges do exist, we should be proud of the investments we have driven to Canada.
Appreciate the discussion, Audrey. Well, that's all the time we have for this edition of the show. Be sure to join the AI conversation on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And tune into our next episode when we'll discuss why improving algorithms and datasets is the future of AI. For more on the latest in business, technology, and innovation from around the world, log on to globalivemedia.com. Thanks for watching.